I'm excited today to have Greg Stevens on the podcast. Greg holds a degree from Baylor University and is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, executive coach, communication consultant, professional mediator, master trainer, certified behavioral analyst, and two-time podcaster. His new book, Build New Bridges, The Art of Restoring Impossible Relationships, has helped people around the world to repair relationships they once thought were beyond repair. Greg has over 28 years of practical business experience and has worked with numerous Fortune 500 companies and national organizations across every industry and service category. Greg, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
William, thanks so much for having me. It's a real honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
Well, I would love to start, Greg, with you sharing some of your story with our listeners, particularly around your journey and development as a leader. How did this all get started?
That's a great question. I never looked to do what I'm doing today. Teaching leadership programs, even being an executive coach, none of that was in my sights as I was growing up. I wanted to be in sales. I enjoyed sales. I didn't really know when I started Baylor what I wanted to do, but I ended up selling cemetery property door to door in Houston, Texas, to put myself through Baylor because I was on my own at 17. Wow. And I learned in 8 weeks, I actually paid for an entire year at Baylor doing that.
Oh my goodness.
And I learned to get cussed out every day. But I also, when I finished that summer, I was really bulletproof in a lot of ways. Yeah. But I never expected to be doing this work. One of the things my company would do, I worked for a pharmaceutical company for 13 years. And when I started working for them, they would pay for me to take any type of courses, traditional and non-traditional. So I thought, I've just put myself through 4 years at college where I paid for it. I'm going to get something back. So for 12 of those 13 years, I took classes in sociology, psychology, human development, human behavior, human potential, traditional, non-traditional, anything I could do. And I engaged with a course called The Forum, with Landmark Forum, with a group called Landmark Education. And that really changed my life. And it put me on a trajectory of having integrity in my life, taking responsibility where I hadn't. And I ended up running into a life coach that I ended up hiring. And I was actually outgrowing my business, and I was looking at an acting career and on the side, and had an agent, had done some plays and things here in Austin. And one day with my life coach, I said, I love it when I'm on stage. I love that moment. But I said, the rest of it doesn't call to me like I thought it would. But one of the things I found is when you start shooting for a target around doing something different, the right thing shows up for you. And it doesn't happen sitting on the couch wishing something would change. You've got to get out and do something. And me getting out and finding an acting coach, finding an agent, getting out, doing plays and ads and things like that actually propelled me into finding something. And I came to my life coach. I just said, this just doesn't call to me. He said, have you ever thought about doing what I do? Coaching and training. And he taught a man-woman relationship class, and I loved it. And I said, no, I've never thought about doing this. And he said, well, think about it. About a week later, I came back. I said, well, what should I do? And he said, well, there's this new thing you can take online. But he said, I believe in doing a true apprenticeship. So I ended up working with him for about 2.5 years, actually coaching for free, producing courses for him. He was teaching me in leadership, and I did free coaching, and he helped and coached me along the way. And I did all that while keeping my own business. and
My goodness.
well, not keeping my business, but actually working for the pharmaceutical company. So I was doing all of this on the side. So you can imagine I was really busy. And then about 2.5 years later, I went out on my own and just jumped off. And I found leadership is really, to be a leader, you need followers.
Mm. Well, that's
You know,
true.
that's the true definition. If you have followers, you're a leader, and you can lead from anywhere you are. But I learned to look for my vision and go where I needed to go, and people just started showing up. Of course, I went out and beat the bushes trying to get people in my courses and do those things. But I found the most powerful thing is that the best clients for me show up. The people who
Mm.
really need leadership skills show up. The people who, and I specialize in an area where I teach people how to have the hardest conversations of their life. And I teach them in a 6-month period to do that for the rest of their life.
Mm.
So many people will take courses, and I taught crucial conversations as a master trainer with, as a hired consultant with crucial learning for 24 years. Taught that class everywhere. It's one of the best training classes anyone could ever take. But what I found was the leaders were coming out saying that was the best class. And then 2 months later, they're not using it. Well, you have to have an application, and it takes time. You don't bake lasagna in 5 minutes. It takes time to do that. And so now what I'm doing after I wrote my book, I stepped out on my own to actually help people. And I found it's about a 20-week process. I've created a process using different materials, but in 20 weeks, I teach people how to have the conversations they continually typically avoid and or handle poorly. And I teach them in 20 weeks how to lean into them, how to actually apply the skills, how to manage their emotions, how to address the emotions of others, how to create psychological safety in the moment, how to listen properly, how to actually investigate and find the underlying issues when accountability is not there, how to do all that and build the relationship at the same time. So
Mm.
it takes time to do that. And we don't throw people in on the deep end at first. We actually walk them out there. And the process is really amazing to watch people have breakthroughs about self-awareness and how they've been showing up in these conversations. Typically, leaders come in and they think they do pretty well at these because they've risen to a certain level and they've done certain things really well. But what we've found, these skills that I'm teaching, most people don't have. Less than 2% of people I run into are really good at this.
I remember about 25 years ago hearing Joseph Granny talk about crucial conversations.
He is awesome.
And
Yeah.
my goodness, what a powerful thing that was for me to hear somebody address that. And I'll tell you, so many of the people who come to me and hire me to help them, it's around having difficult conversations. It's around learning this. When I met you and heard what you're doing and the book that you've written, I was like, okay, this is a phenomenal resource. Here's a 6-month program that can help people seriously dive deep on this. This is something I think we should be teaching in kindergarten, like how to have difficult conversations, because it will serve you in every area of your life for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Yet I find people in their 40s, 50s, and beyond who have never learned this skill.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons we've just started a program, a leadership program and we're marketing toward the parents or grandparents of kids who are 21 to 28 years old. Maybe they're a senior in college, or maybe doing a gap year, or maybe they're early on the first 1 to 5 years in their career. And what we're teaching them now in the leadership program are other leadership pieces, but also these conversational pieces to actually become better at having them. Because what we typically find is we're going to be teaching the next generation of leaders what this generation of leaders are having problems with. And
Wow.
we want to make sure we prepare them. And, I love working with all my clients, but as you know, there's a different energy that comes with different levels of leadership. You have early leaders, emerging leaders. There is a openness to really try new things. And typically when I'm working with executives, I'm working with those executives who are lifelong leaders. Those who typically aren't, but there's a lot of them, they aren't coachable. And I know how to do it. None of us does it alone, as John Maxwell says. We need others to help lift us up. And early on, we feel like that will be helpful to teach leaders early on to reach out, to have these conversations, to lean in. I believe it nitro boosts their career and their life, because the side effect is also interesting, because they start having conversations with their parents they've never had.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it really helps across their entire life, because we think we compartmentalize our life, but we bring our home life to work and our work life home. And you're a whole person, and we're split many different ways in our attention, and we're distracted in many ways. But what if one of the biggest distractions I find are people who have been avoiding conversations, and it's such an energy drain, but most of us have tolerated it so long, we don't understand that what that drain really is. My friend Dan Mormon said, it's like barnacles on a ship. A couple don't matter, but all of a sudden you look at a ship that's been out there a while, it has tons of barnacles. It needs some time to shave those off, and then you can really move if you have that ability.
That's really good. I think of so many relationships of clients that I've worked with, and even in my own journey, that I think, wow, that one's kind of beyond repair. And when I saw your book and how you describe it as helping people repair relationships they once thought were beyond repair, I thought, oh, this is going to be a good read.
Oh, thanks.
Can you talk a little bit about the book and why you wrote it and what you've seen so far as people have begun to read and apply it?
Yeah. After teaching when I first started teaching Crucial Conversations, it wasn't even called Crucial Conversations. They hadn't written a book yet. I was working and I took it. It was called Path the Dialogue. Then it became Dialogue Smarts. I took it when it was Path the Dialogue, and before they wrote the book. And I used it, and it started changing everything. So did a train the trainer, became a trainer in it. And as I started training, I thought, I want to be the type of leader that practices what I teach. And I thought, how can I show my participants that I've really done this, rather than speaking from theory? All that's really good, but I wanted to have an experience. So I had a crazy idea. I like to play games in my life with myself. And so I said, let's go clean up all your past relationships that are muddy.
Ooh.
And when I say clean up a relationship, I mean, what was the criteria? Well, if I was walking down a hall and I saw someone about to walk toward me, and I would rather take a different hallway to get to my office, that was a relationship I needed to clean up. I wanted to be able to look everyone in the eye with confidence and know that I've done my part. And I had a list of 36 different people, and it took me nearly 2.5 years.
Wow.
And some of those conversations were one and done, and one person I had to go back to 7 different times. So there's no perfection in what we're talking about. And some people say, well, are you good friends with those people? Well, some of those relationships were renewed, still friends today. Others just completed. That's another thing. Sometimes completion doesn't mean you don't see another person again. There's just nothing there. But some of those people I've never seen, and people say, well, what was it? One of the things I've also found is many times if we want to clean up a relationship, it's bugging us. It may not be anything that other person needs to say. I never spoke my truth to that person in a respectful way. I didn't come across as my best. And several of the conversations William, I just said, hey, you probably never knew this was going on, but I needed to say this to get it off my chest. This is not about you. This is about me. And I'm sorry I held this against you for this long. And I just needed to get it out. And it was amazing to watch the connection that happens when you're honest and respectful with someone, because I wasn't trying to get anything from them. I was doing this exercise to be able to stand in front of people with an experience rather than a theory about it. And so in the book, I talk about some of those stories, and I begin the book with my most difficult story, my relationship with my father. But that was my very last crucial conversation that I had on that list of 36. And I walked people through other people that I've coached through the last 25 years about the relationships, people who walked in and said, there's no way this will work, but I'll try it, and come out the other side with just something beautiful. Also, I'm a professional mediator, and most people think mediation in terms of lawyers and what you're doing in a divorce. Can do that, but I've focused my mediation on intact teams that need to move forward, or families or family businesses that actually need to clean things up and move forward, because there's so many times in these teams we're holding on to the past. And I use quotes in my master team programs each week, a new one. And one that came up recently was, don't trip over something behind you. And that's what most teams are doing. They're tripping over the things behind them in the past. But what I've also found is many times we can't let go of that past until we speak it and complete it. It holds within us. And when it holds in something in there, when you bury something, it doesn't just stay there. It actually grows. But what we want to do when I speak it, I put it out into light where actually everything that's negative about it can be washed away or burned off. And I can actually start with something new with that.
That is beautiful. And I can only imagine the number of stories that you have watched that did seem hopeless. But that something new was born.
Yeah, it's interesting. I go to a networking program, and one of the things they say is, give us a case study of someone you've helped. And every week I try to have a completely different story. And it shows up. I have 2 or 3 stories every week that people are telling me, I never thought this was doable, or this is a real breakdown right now. That's one of the things I talk to people in our programs. We talk about breakdowns and breakthroughs. Most of us want a breakthrough.
Yeah.
But you have to have a breakdown always precedes a breakthrough. Always. And you do not get to have a breakthrough until there's conflict. So when you start to see conflict, I see it differently now. I used to run from conflict. I'll be honest, William, my initial reaction is, I don't want to do that. But now I'm looking on the other side. Rather than looking at the conflict, I'm looking at the result I can get through this conflict. That's where my breakthrough lives. And Marcus Aurelius said, the obstacle becomes the way. That's it. But most of us are beating around the bush. We're avoiding that conflict. When you avoid it, it stays with you. There's another quote I have: pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So
that's good.
You're going to have the pain. Most people put these conversations off for, I want to put it off. They put it off. Let's say you put it off a month. Well, what you've just traded is probably 15 to 20 minutes of uncomfortableness for a month of being uncomfortable. And guess what? You still have to have that 15 to 20 minutes of uncomfortableness. Right. It's going to happen. I'd rather do it now, but most of us don't understand emotional accounting. That's what I call it. If you looked at a spreadsheet, I can have it now or have it in a month. What's it gonna? This is an investment now, because guess what? If I have it now, that next month my mind is open for creativity, for connection, for healing, for all of that. If I put it off, it gets even more rotten. It's more difficult to have it a month later. But most people don't do it because they don't know how. Because all the rah-rah in the world, go do this. If you don't know how, you're probably going to blunder it up at least 50% of the time. And with relationships, we don't want to do that.
Well, the advantage of engaging someone like you is that they can take a shortcut. they can go farther and get there faster.
Yeah, that's it.
Because you've walked so many people through this,
Right.
that you can help them to navigate those waters. We often say that growth only happens on the other side of change, right? But we resist change. We want growth, but we resist change. The same thing is true with conflict. And I love the way you phrase that. I love emotional accounting. What a great concept.
Yeah.
I think that's something that our listeners are going to really resonate with. And I hope that's going to cause some reflection. It certainly will with me.
Well, it's interesting. I have a gentleman in one of my classes. He said, Greg, something I never imagined. He said, I'm having all these conversations I've been putting off. And he said, what I found is there's money on the other side of them in business. He said, every time I've dealt with them, it's created a relationship where it's actually creating more abundance. And it's just, it's overflowing for him now, because when you get through that, if you're thinking business, put a dollar sign on it. I had a gentleman who's head of a large plant. And when he first came to me, great guy, I could just tell. And it was interesting. I asked him a couple of questions and I could tell he was really good at what he did. But the people in his plant said, oh, he's a tyrant, and just couldn't stand him. And the CEO, who actually, and this gentleman was the head of the plant, the CEO had me work with him. And he came back and said, I talked with him. I said, well, tell me about your worst boss ever. And he said, oh, he was a tyrant and everything. And I said, well, tell me about your best boss. He said, oh, he's this. I said, good news is you're like your best boss. Thanks. And bad news is you're like your worst boss. What do you mean? No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. And he said, and I said, here's the words that I were talked to me about before we came in, that people believe you're a tyrant. They use that exact word. He was shocked. And I said, let's talk about this. And one of the things we talked about, what respect looks like to him. And respect look like, if you don't speak up and speak your mind, that feels disrespectful. Okay. But how many people want to speak their mind to their boss?
Right.
They're fearful to. And so each time he was blind to how he came across, because if you feel like you're being disrespected, your behavior shows up a different way. You raise your voice and you don't see. You roll your eyes. You do a lot of different things you don't mean to do because you feel disrespected. But what if you started changing all of that? And it was interesting because in the program, you go and have different conversations. People at first, they're hesitant. It feels awkward. They don't know how. But by the end, it's like anything. When you first try something you've never done before, it's awkward. But it was interesting because their plant had a breakdown while he was actually at a different area of the world. And he said, he came to the next master team. He said, you're not going to believe what happened. I said, what's that? He said, oh my gosh. He said, the two guys that have been my biggest naysayers, I depend on them, but they fight with each other. They fight with me. He said, but over the last 4 months, things have been changing since we talked. He said, this breakdown probably should have closed the plant for a couple of days. He said it ended up closing for a couple of hours because these guys jumped into action, worked together, did everything they needed to, and then reported it to me. I didn't even need to worry about it. He said it saved us several $1 million. Just that one thing. He said, I'm so proud of them. They've really changed. And I said, you know why? He said, well, I've been having conversations with them. I said, it's not the conversations. It's because their leader, you have changed.
That's right.
And it was interesting because the director of HR, when we came in to have the meeting, the final meeting with the CEO, him and the director of HR, she was the biggest worrier. And I knew her well, and she's a straight shooter. She's a kind person. And she sat there and she didn't say anything the whole meeting. And then the CEO said, well, I've seen a lot of change. This has been really good. And she looked at, I said, well, what do you think? And she looked at me, she goes, I have to say, I didn't know change could happen this fast. In all my years, she said, you've just worked with one person. 6 months ago, when you walked in that plant, no one wanted to be there. Now the entire culture has changed. And she said, I've never seen this before. She said, we've done all time, but here's the thing. He was a true leader.
Yeah.
He didn't like how he came across. And it's interesting because this week I just got an email from him. I stopped working with him about 4 months ago. I just got an email said, things are going great. I just wanted to check in. Thanks so much. But he knows how to do it. That's my goal.
Yes.
I don't keep people I believe people always need coaching, but my specialty, I just need them for 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so good, man.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about you for a minute. You know, you have to lead at a higher level today than you did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that same thing is going to be true 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay on top of your game? How do you level up with the new leadership skills that your clients, your team, your business are going to need you to have in the years to come?
Well, I'm constantly reading. I've always said leaders are readers.
Yeah.
I'm constantly reading, and not emails and stuff. I have to read a lot of those more than I care. People, I read all the time. What books have you dove into? And that's another thing. I use my time as best I can. So now I listen to I have an Audible account. I listen to books constantly, and I try to apply what I've learned. That's the biggest thing. It's not just the knowledge, it's the application. Because if I'm coaching, I need to be able to see how difficult this is. When I'm asking people in my programs, I give them exercises. I've done these exercises for many years. Guess what? I do it with them still.
That's good.
I get my boots on the ground. I've got to be there. I try to skill up in different areas. I mean, before COVID, I'd become certified to train virtually. But then COVID, and I didn't do much, but I'd done some. But then COVID hit, and I got really good because in essence, everything went to virtual. I had to learn.
That's right.
I learned to take on things new. I always thought, why do a podcast? Well, I think there's a positive message. You know, podcasting, speaking in front of groups are very different than training or coaching someone.
Very.
One of the things I constantly ask leaders to do, what are you trying new for yourself? Not just how are you leading there. I think everything you're doing has a component of leadership because you feel awkward when you're doing something new at first. You need to never forget that when you're leading people. You need to understand we're here to guide them. And I teach a mentoring program, and most people think, oh, here's the mentor and here's the mentee. And the idea is that a mentee should always be the one generating the relationship. I disagree. I think it's the mentor. How difficult is it? Because the mentee feels like they're intruding or something like that. Yeah. And so I consider a mentorship is I've just gone through the woods with a machete and I've cleared the way. My goal, it was a small way. My goal is to get that next person, not who's coming behind me, up to work with me, maybe ahead of me, whatever that may be. I'd love for them to surpass me, but get them to, when they get up there, to do the same. All of a sudden, rather than just having a small pathway, we've got an 8-lane highway. That's because we have so many people going through that. That's leadership, is handing it down, having compassion, teaching others, constantly teaching, because you're constantly learning.
So good. I could not possibly agree more. I love that answer. So in the reading that you do and the books that you've read through, is there any that stand out in your mind? One that's just, man, this one's made a difference in my journey that you'd recommend to the leaders who are listening?
Yeah, I'm going to give you about 5. Okay.
Oh, wow. Go for it.
Because I think, and they're all varied. Okay. They're all varied because I believe you're a whole person. You need to look. One of my staples is a book called Awareness by Anthony DeMello. And he passed away in 1985. The book reads a little different because it was written after he passed away from his lectures. But if you listen to it on Audible, I encourage people to do that because Audible are the actual lectures that they pulled it from.
Oh,
So you get to hear him do that. But he passed away in 1985. His teachings are still relevant. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz is a great foundational book, simple to get people engaged.
yeah.
And here's one out of left field. Most people wouldn't think for leadership, but I love Matthew McConaughey, and his book Green Lights is about his life. And if you get a chance, don't read it, listen to it, because it's like having Matthew McConaughey at dinner, but he talks about the positive message, what to do, all the different things that come into your life. And he does it with great stories. So people who aren't typically want to read a book like that, they'd probably listen to a Matthew McConaughey book that entertains and edutainment is what I would call it.
Nice. I like it.
And another book is The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. When I read that book, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It put everything I've been teaching the last 25 years into one book. And I was so happy I didn't have to write it. so I have all my, that's one of the first books when I'm teaching my classes. Of course, I asked them to read my book on relationships, but it's one of the books. Also, of course, Crucial Conversations, Crucial Accountability, Crucial Influence. They teach you how to have these conversations and how to influence. So those are kind of some core conversational books that I have. And I also, a new book that I think is important, my friend Anita Mahel wrote a book, Do You Take Your Own Advice?
Oh.
And all it is, it's 30 or 31 little snippets about people he met, and he lays out their advice. Then on the next page, he has 2 questions for you to fill in. And you write your own advice that he asked the question, what would you say to yourself for this? You write it through. Well, I did that. And I took one a day, take me less than 5 minutes a day. At the end of it, I took it on a trip with me and I pulled it out and I was talking with a friend. I go, and I read it to him. It's like, it was my book on advice. And my friend was like, just writing, oh, this is excellent. I was like, wow, his book became my book. So if you want to find out your wisdom, because just writing it, I never looked back at it till weeks later when I pulled it out, but it becomes your book, your advice, and you'll be amazed at the wisdom that you have for yourself because you have your answers. No one else does.
Greg, I could talk to you for another hour. I swear. Like every time we talk, I learn something, and this has been no exception. And I'm sure our listeners feel the same. I'm so grateful for you investing the time to be here today and share so freely with our listeners. I know they're going to want to stay connected to you and continue to learn more from you and about what you do. What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, just go to my website, alignment-resources.com. And my email is the same, greg@alignment-resources.com, or my business partner, Noah Boughton, noah@alignment-resources.com. Don't forget that dash in the middle. That's probably the best. We have podcasts and some other things as well. But, and I'm actually launching a new podcast this summer called A Spiritual Peace. And it's going to be all my guests from my Shot of Inspiration podcast. It's going to be their spiritual message to the world. And it's really interesting because everyone has so many different ones. It's not based in any typical religion or spiritual concept. It's for each individual to share that. So those are some of the things I'm trying to do.
Sounds fascinating. And if listeners, you have not gotten Greg's book yet during the course of this conversation, there's going to be a link in the show notes for you to do that. I'm going to highly encourage this because restoring impossible relationships, these conversations that we need to have in order to be able to move forward and not trip over our past. Love that. This is something that we all need to work on and develop, and then to begin to share with other people. Greg, thank you for writing this and for sharing this today.
William, thank you for having me on the show. And the listeners, thank you so much. Keep listening, please.